Welcome to Automotive EV Live. Today's session will be driven and moderated by Dennis Mans, who's an excellent panel that will be really discussing what we need to do within the vehicle distribution sector. So, as I'm getting pretty tongue-tied here, I will hand over to you, Dennis.
Thanks, Peter. Welcome to everybody who's viewing today to the Automotive EV virtual meeting. I always enjoy doing these sessions, and today we have a especially good session, and I think everybody's going to enjoy. And as I understand, I guess we have a record number of people who have signed in to see our session. So thank you to everybody who's watching today and everybody who views later on. Our session today is titled Improving Our Network Efficiency and Flow. And I'm happy to have a group of friends, industry friends, who's joined me today and who's going to help us with this overall discussion and dialogue. So, and this, by the way, is one of my favorite topics in the industry. And so I think we're going to have a lot of good exchanges, a lot of good dialogue, and hopefully some good commentary that everybody can take away with this. And as each of you know, we generally do these sessions. We're face-to-face. We're doing the cocktail thing, the coffee thing, the lunch thing. And it's great to have the opportunity to talk to everybody face-to-face. Obviously, we're in a new world today, so that's not going to happen. But still, nonetheless, I love to talk shop. I love to talk about the OEM issues, the industry issues, and also kick back and forth, some of the different solutions that are available that each one of our panelists might be, actively involved in. So with that said, I want to talk about. Well, let me do this. Let me have each of our panelists introduce themselves and kind of talk about, what your specific responsibility is within your organization. And then I want to get into some of the details of what's been happening recently with our OEM business. So, Alex, let me start with you at the top of the screen.
All right. Glad to join you all today. My name is Alex MacGregor with TransDevelopment Group. I'm a senior development manager, which basically we are involved in a little bit of a different side of the business. We actually design and develop finished vehicle facilities for a number of different people in this space. First of all, the OEMs, such as Mazda and Volkswagen. We also work directly with the Class 1 railroads, with the port operators like Wallenius Wilhelmsen, Auto Warehousing, SSA, and sometimes port authorities directly. So we are very nuts and bolts, facility-oriented people, and we live and breathe the finished vehicle side of the business.
Right. Okay, Ryan, let me turn it over to you.
Sure, Dennis. My name is Ryan Kita. I'm with Mazda, and I oversee vehicle distribution and logistics here in the U.S. So my responsibilities really start with vehicle ordering, ensuring that we have the right vehicles configured, and then all the way through logistics down to the dealers.
Very good.
Thanks for having me, Dennis.
Thanks, Ryan. Mark, how about you?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Dennis. My name is Mark Boucher. I'm the Director of Vehicle Logistics for the Volkswagen Group of America. So primarily we handle the distribution of Volkswagen and Audi vehicles throughout the United States, do some export work out of our factory in Tennessee, and also manage the accessories processes at all facilities as well.
Right, okay. And Missy Pearlman was going to join us today from Toyota. Unfortunately, Missy lives in the Texas area, and as everybody's probably aware, we've had tremendous snow and weather issues, and so unfortunately, with the weather, Missy cannot join us today. And then Daniel Gosson with Inform, he will be joining us in a moment. He's in the process of signing on. Daniel, you're not on yet? Okay. So,
hey, Dennis, I am here. Sorry.
Daniel's on. Great.
Getting everything set up.
Okay, very cool. And if you would just give us a little introduction of yourself and what your responsibility is with Inform.
Yeah, sure. Sorry for the delay, but I am the manager of finished vehicle logistics at Inform. So we're focusing very heavily on logistics optimization with a lot of different business units, but primarily my focus is on the outbound supply chain side. And yeah, really excited to join the panel.
Right. Well, again, I want to thank each of you for accepting my invitation. You all were very gracious. Minimal arm twisting, by the way, but I appreciate you guys helping me out. So let's get into the discussion a little bit, but let me start off with some numbers, because I'm a numbers guy who's not a numbers guy, but I'm still a numbers guy, and I'll explain what that means. But 2020 was a tale of two cities. And within each of those two cities, there was two cities. And these guys, I think, understand what I'm talking about. But, for last year, you had the first half of the year, and then you had the second half of the year. And that's one of the two cities. And then the other two cities was you had the truck thing and you had the sedan thing. And I think the numbers I'm going to rattle off in a moment kind of set up some of our dialogue we're going to do following this. But when you look at last year, as we all know, the first half, we started off the year pretty good, really, for all the OEMs. COVID hits, we all get hammered, right? Everything kind of shuts down. But what's truly amazing when you look at the numbers, for those that kind of study the numbers, the second half of the year really turned out so much better than the first half of the year. And I'm talking from a retail side. The fleet discussion, totally different. But on the retail side, the second half of the year, virtually almost every OEM had a really good second half. And most of that was driven on the sedan or on the SUV side. So in 19, we had the 17.1 million sales, which was awesome, right? COVID hits in 2020. We finished the year with 14.6 million sales, which could have been a much worse number. It's not a great number, but 14.6, considering everything, is actually a pretty good number. So the tail within those two cities is that when you look at the truck and sedan thing, for 2020, 76% of all those industry sales were the truck SUV thing. And so that shift that we've all been discussing for a few years now, sedan, SUV, that pendulum continues to improve and evolve. So the truck business is the bread and butter for every OEM. And Ryan and Mark, I'm sure will talk about that here in a little bit. When you look deeper into the numbers a little bit and see exactly who was impacted, sedan sales were down 26% from 19 to 20. And then truck sales, even though they weren't up, they were down less than half of that. Truck sales were only down 9.7%. So the truck sales, again, kind of saved the business for a lot of the OEM customers. Looking at several of the larger brands and Mazda and Volkswagen, I've added into this thing, but really General Motors, Toyota, Ford, everybody was down double digits for last year. General Motors down 12%, Toyota 12%, Ford 15%, et cetera, et cetera. Now, Ryan was the star of the whole thing. He actually eked out a small increase, which, Mazda sales were up 0.2%, I think, Ryan. Yeah, and so that 0.2% increase, even though it's a small percentage, I think Mazda increased their share of the market by a couple points. So that was a big thing. And even Volkswagen was down 10%, but even with being down not quite half of what the industry is, Volkswagen picked up market share, which was great. So, and then as we continue this dialogue, and we're going to get into our panel here in a moment, but the fourth quarter continued to show improvement across the board for virtually everybody. General Motors, even though they were down 12% for last year, the fourth quarter, they were actually up 5%. Toyota was down 12% for the year, but for the fourth quarter, they were up 10%. So and this kind of continued. Volkswagen was up 11% mark for the quarter. Mazda was up 8% for the quarter. And so what happened, I think, and these guys can talk about it, maybe we flip this around. when COVID hit, a lot of OEMs kind of shut down some of the production number, or slowed them down, maybe is a better word. But then as the demand showed in the retail marketplace, they had to pump up some numbers. And I think that it took a while to get that back in there. And so from an OEM standpoint, from a retail dealer standpoint, the industry showed a lot of good progression, and hopefully we continue that momentum into this calendar year. So that's kind of the numbers that I wanted to share with everybody. And for me, it's kind of, because a lot of solutions that we're going to talk about are kind of based upon, how some of these brands are doing, and because that drives a lot of their investments within the industry. So let me, Mark, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind. And so my first question to you as a panelist is, so from a finished automotive logistics space, how are things going? How is the finished vehicle industry doing at the moment?
Well, I think well, and I think post-COVID, we've changed out of necessity more than anything else our model, but we're starting to do some longer range planning on a new reality, right? So when we first started to deal with COVID back in first quarter of last year, our conversation went from, what are we going to do with all of these cars? We had thousands and thousands of cars that we held for a period of time, right? But we also didn't build any cars during that period of time. So we went from a period of a lot of stock to not very much. And we've been able to stay lean, much more lean coming out of this, getting into the end of the second quarter and now to current. We're more of a hand-to-mouth model, which is good, right? We're not carrying as much inventory as we had before, but we're getting to a point now where we're saying we don't want to go back to kind of where we were pre-COVID, where we carried a bit more stock. Our port inventories were higher, so we're looking at more of a just in time isn't the right term, but wondering if the footprint we have today needs to be as big as it is today.
Right.
Which is a good thing, right? Except when you get into situations like where we have now, it's a juggling act. It's a balancing act, because Texas is closed right now in the United States. We operate 2 large facilities in the state of Texas. So can I make some of that up from my other locations on the East Coast or the West Coast or in the middle part of the country? It's a little more difficult when you're not carrying that inventory. So it's a different model, and you hit on it too, Dennis. We've gone from a company that we have traditionally since 1949 in the United States been a car company, right? We sold a few SUVs. We weren't an SUV and truck company, and we've changed that. Our model mix is now more SUVs than passenger cars, and that's a different commodity. That's you're spending more money to ship those cars. You're shipping those cars a little bit differently. So we've also been tackling that as well. We have another vehicle coming from Mexico, not to mention the ID4 from Europe, our EV, that's changing the way we're doing business. So a lot of change, but we've been able to realize some good coming out of all of the bad that happened in 2020.
Yeah. And I like your last comment, because I kind of used that myself before, where I think there's a lot of things to learn out of what we've just gone through. And some of those things, hopefully we retain and we carry forward with us. But it's, it pays to have a little bit of a memory, which mine's not as good as it used to be, but whatever. Ryan, how about you? With Mazda, you guys, like I mentioned earlier, you guys had a really good year last year, even with COVID. You had a plus number. So how's the logistics space? How's it working for you guys right now?
Yeah, Dennis, we went through a similar situation as everybody did in the industry, in which all of a sudden you have this immediate shutdown when we went into our quarantine, and everything just stopped, and we had inventory everywhere, and we also slowed our factory output as well. And our target is always to be lean in inventory, particularly at the dealer level, and have fast turns. We were in a situation at that time where inventory was plentiful and we had it all around. And I think that really was what helped us get through that time period. while you don't want to plan for these kinds of events, when you have a long-term event like that where your sales numbers just plummet and it takes a long time to recover, you don't want to really plan for those, but you just have to react to that the best you can. And we had the inventory around. We had to find storage lots throughout the country to hold these units, really just for a couple of months. And then we were able to start to relieve that inventory as the sales started to come back. And we were fortunate enough to have those sales come back early. And in different parts of the country, it was kind of interesting to see how this affected the different parts of the country differently. The Northeast obviously hit very hard by it. And slow to come out, which is really one of our larger volume areas. But we've recovered now, and in a similar situation, as Mark mentioned, where we are very lean in inventory and really turning our inventory quickly, which is a good thing for us, and obviously what we would like to do and continue to do in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting when we have issues, whether it's a COVID issue or right now, I think everybody's being hammered by the microchip issue, or if there's a labor issue, or back in 11 we had the tsunami thing in Japan, which created issues. And at that moment in time, it's a horrible problem, whatever the issue is, and you think it's going to be with you for a long time. But it's amazing how creative each of us can become within the industry, and we work our way out of these things. And so the moment the event happens, and the skies are dark, you're never quite sure how long it's going to last. But generally, everybody kind of jumps in, and we put some corrections in place, and we kind of wiggle our way out of some of these things. So good comments. Thanks.
Dennis, if I could add one comment to that, I just want to give a little bit of credit to our processing partners and our carrier partners, if I could.
Yep.
Coming out of COVID, they've had to change fundamentally some of their models too, as far as sanitation and mitigation when you have a positive case of COVID and quarantining requirements. And we've been hit hard in a couple of places, and really developed through all of those partnerships and through our environmental group here at VW. And like you hit on it, coming out of that, it's, oh my goodness, how are we going to do it? And a lot of people really came up with creative and innovative ways for us to, as an industry, get back on our feet. And I think we need to give those folks a lot of credit.
Totally agree. Good comment. But that's kind of why personally I like doing these sessions, doing these conferences. Is stay connected with different parts of the industry, and to make sure we're having those conversations, within the industry to make sure we're all staying connected. And but I agree with you. It takes every one of those supplier vendor partners to make each one of us a little bit better. So. And that's a great segue to Alex. And so, so Alex, when you did your introduction, we talked about facilities and all this kind of thing. And so what trends do you see happening on the terminal side of the business that wasn't there, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago? What are you guys seeing?
Well, so we've seen a few different things. One is that OEMs are demanding the ability to do processing type work at more locations than they did in the past. So I think inspections, PDIs, and a relentless focus on quality, it's permeated at this point all the OEMs and across all geographies. And that requires facilities. It requires facilities to inspect vehicles, and facilities to accessorize them, facilities to fix them. So that's one major trend. Now, reconditioning fleet vehicles was something we were talking a whole lot about 2 years ago, and we haven't been talking about it that much lately, but that's probably going to be coming back as well. And that also is a major facilities question. So we've also seen this shift towards quality and in accessorization in our business at TransDevelopment. I mean, 15 or 20 years ago, we were involved mainly in constructing rail heads in rail-oriented facilities. And we begin to focus more and more on large VPC or accessorization type building projects that are accommodating finished vehicles. Another one that's interesting to me is hail protection, which I know that Mark's company at Volkswagen's been a big advocate for. And when we're talking about kind of network robustness and the unknown. This weather event in Texas right now is a good case in point that all sorts of things can be thrown at us by Mother Nature, and with all of however many cars and many hundreds of thousands moving around the country at any point in time, they're all exposed to that. So that, I think, can take a big risk factor out of the equation. We have to identify, those sorts of risk sources, and I think the OEMs that are doing that proactively, are going to be well positioned in the future.
Great. So Daniel, I'm a systems guy who's not a systems guy, but I do appreciate what the systems do for these guys and when I was doing their job on the Honda side. So, and Inform offers what I think a lot of great creative system solutions, So why don't you share with us and talk to us about, decisional or digital decision making, and what exactly does that mean from the Inform side?
Yeah, sure. I think that's a great question, Dennis. So the big differentiator from Inform from other solutions that are out there is that our background is in operations research and mathematics, right? So optimization to us isn't just, having a little bit more efficiency. It's actually leveraging mathematics to run a true optimization. And so digital decision making is that next level within the IT support systems for companies like Volkswagen, for Mazda and Toyota, to be able to let them have the systems basically go through all of the data that they have available, try to make a predictive analysis of what the best solution might be, and then have the human that has all of the domain knowledge from working in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years basically say, I agree with this, or you know what, I know that we should do this workaround, right? Because maybe historically this route within the month of March is not the best to go to because it might be tornado season in the Midwest or something like this, right? So you still want to be able to override that, but you want agility. And to I think Ryan's point earlier, when OEMs were going out to try to find additional space to park their cars for 3 months that all the dealers were shut down, the companies that were first movers on that probably got the best rates and the best locations because, unfortunately, real estate is the one thing that you can't create within the world, right? So we can create a lot of things. We can't create additional land to rent out or to park cars onto. And so even though Alex might argue, you can turn swampland into great parking locations, but it's a finite resource. And so being able to be proactive and being able to understand when am I going to run out of capacity, what's my best next location, maybe what contracts do I already have in place or what contracts do I need to go out and procure, is a big thing. And then also kind of, Alex in TransDevelopment and Inform, we're not connected, but we're connected in a sense, right? Because a lot of the things that he's doing on the ground level, getting these terminals up and running, we're on the execution side. So when he's mentioning that more and more companies are looking at quality and vehicle processing centers, our solutions manage those terminals from parking optimization to vehicle processing center workforce optimization as well. So we plan the processing center on a minute by minute basis. So there's no cherry picking. We take into account technician capabilities, parts availability, all of these things, so that when a dealer calls up and says, hey, we've got a executive level customer that needs these cars, these are hot cars that we need to get out today, we can roll them into the plan within 5 minutes or less and have those cars be processed same day, while still not creating disruption for the other cars that maybe are a lower priority. And then on top of that, we have all of the EV talk and telematics, right? So connected cars and EVs are the next big step. And so, I'm sure from Alex's perspective, a lot of the terminals are trying to figure out how do we get charging infrastructure into an established location already, because that's going to be huge. As Mark was mentioning, the ID4s are starting to roll into their locations. And so some places have the infrastructure already, others don't. Some of them are kind of Band-Aid infrastructure placements. And so You need to be able to get all of that together. And then on top of that, you need to optimize those resources. So you don't want to just leave a car on a battery charger and then come back and check it in 30 minutes to see what the level is. You want to be able to connect that car, create work orders to pull it off of the charger, and have everything be digitized. So that is our big thing. We want to digitize all of the processes, and we want to use mathematical optimization to make our organizations more efficient.
Right, good answer. No, I mean, and just to kind of jump on what your couple of your comments is I mean, there's a reason I asked you and Alex on today's session, because I always believed when I was in my Honda role, if we had a great facility that's laid out well, I'm going to have a savings of X every day. And if I have a poor location that's not, it's an expense to me that I would love to, improve upon. System-wise, the same thing. If you have good systems, I have great visibility what's going on. I promise you, Ryan, when he starts his day every morning, he's pulling up the numbers, and Mark the same way. I'm sure they do that morning operations call. What's happening in their world? What do my numbers look like? And they're checking that bell curve. Am I right, Ryan? So you're looking at the one end of the bell curve where you're not happy and you're trying to push everything in the, and so that's how we run our business. And Alex's business, TransDevelopment does a great job with all the OEM customers to help them operate better. System-wise, you help your customers out. And so that's how these guys start their day. They're looking to improve their network. So, let me jump in on, we talked about EV, and let's get into that a little bit. So Mark, I read something a couple months ago. We got about 90 EV/hybrid models being introduced in the marketplace over the next 36 months or what have you. Is this going to be a curveball that we're going to struggle to adjust with, or is it just another model?
Well, that's a good question and a fair question, because it's been, up to now a very small percentage of what we've done as an industry. But I think you're going to see those numbers and that percentage of the overall, annual sales go up dramatically and fairly quickly. Handling the vehicle is a bit different, but at the end of the day, it's a car. You load it on the train and you load it on the truck and you do all of those things. We do with some variation, the same type of accessories installations that we do on our combustion engine vehicles. There are some, and Daniel hit on it, I mean, there's some handling requirements that are a bit different. Getting a proper charging infrastructure and battery testing requirement structure and all of those things in place have been something we've been working on feverishly for the last year or so, and continue to work on as we develop new places and new operations. And then also, working with our carrier partners, just to create, and working with the AIAG and some other groups to create some standards, right, around these new vehicles. How do you take one off a truck if the battery's dead, right? Some of those things you just haven't had to deal with before. So we're working with those groups who are, that's a combination of the other OEMs to create those industry standards as well, so that we're handling them. But I think we've had some benefit with some companies, and we had a very, very low volume EV previously, right? So we have some experience, but using kind of that path that some of the other OEMs have created with their vehicles has helped too, in our conversations with our partners. So we're ready to dive in, I think, and you've said it, Volkswagen is going, full bore. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that infrastructure is in place.
Great, thank you. Ryan, is this another Y2K thing? We're making a lot over nothing. Hey, you're laughing at me, but we would do those meetings for like a year preparing for Y2K, and maybe I have forgotten now, but I don't think we actually had any issues. I mean, is this another Y2K thing?
Yeah, we didn't have any issues with that. No, we don't see it as a Y2K type of a facade where everybody got excited over nothing, but it did produce a big boom to the economy.
Yeah.
No, we don't see this as a one-time thing. And being here in California, the actual infrastructure that Daniel was talking about, we're seeing a lot of significant improvements. And you drive up to the sports arena, and they've got charging stations all around. So I think from that perspective, we've come a long way, and a lot of homes here now are being built with a home charger in it. So I think California is probably on the leading edge in terms of developing its electric infrastructure.
Very cool. Okay, thanks. Alex, what's happening on the terminal side with regards to EV? Anything new, different in the discussions?
Sure. So I guess what I'm going to say maybe 5 or 10 years ago would have been a contrarian position, but I think that the industry's sort of come around to the idea that for terminals, we really need to be cautious and deliberate about making the best use of what we already have. I think that in the recent past, there were big concerns that a major EV transition, where all the vehicles are electric or a huge percentage of them, was going to require completely rethinking these terminals from the ground up. That we need massive charging capacity, massive electric capacity all over the place. But instead, with the help especially of people like Daniel, I think that this transition is going to be manageable. The challenge that I see is determining what the real requirements are going to be at the facility. And right now we're still kind of in the 5 to 10% penetration of the market, where a lot of facility managers can just say, okay, we're just going to stick a few electric vehicle chargers on the side of an existing building, and just kind of wing it. And you can, when you're handling 50 or 100 EVs a month, you can probably manage something like that. When it turns into you're handling 5,000 of them a month, it might be a different story. But I don't think that it's going to mean brand new facilities or new electric substations or anything like that. What I think is going to be required is a coming together of people on the operations and finished vehicle side and specialists in that, with people on the technical side, systems, IT, charging technology, because if one side or the other is the side that drives it, I don't think we're going to see the best outcome. But I don't think we're going to need to see like a vast terminal recalibration from this.
Okay, very good. And Daniel, you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, you've done a pilot on some EVs or something. Can you share any of that with us, or?
Yeah, sure. So, from the EV handling side, one of our largest customers is ICO, which is located in the port of Zeebrugge as well as Antwerp. And collectively, they use our system to process 2.6 million cars a year. Some of it is just kind of outbound from Europe to the UK, so it's just a lot of short sea travel. Some of that also is having accessorization, and with the EVs now, they also have to have some charging infrastructure. And so the one massive piece of development that they've done in order to try to support some of that charging as well as some of their green initiatives is they have put up a very significant amount of wind turbines around the outside of the port facility, which I believe was also subsidized by the government in order to feed some power in there, without, again, having to put up massive substations and all of this extra effort. So they're getting that green power, they're getting all of that power fed into the port, and on top of that, they have 30 dedicated chargers set up where they have a specific location for them. So to Alex's point, it's not just slapped on, with a little bit of duct tape to the side of the building type of a deal. They've got a dedicated location where they're going to handle those, the charging of the EVs. And then also what we can do with our system is if we have manual input of the battery charge, or if we can pull data from the chargers themselves, or best case would be vehicle telematics, being able to read the vehicle charge through that. We can set up a work order to move the car to the charging location and say which charger is open, and even predict, based on how much time is left on that car, which charger might be open by the time that other car gets there, right? So really being able to optimize the use of those chargers. And then once we get towards that upper limit of the transport battery charge level that we would want for that specific model, we can then go and pull that car off. So everything is a digitized process, leveraging kind of, that traditional Internet of Things ideology, where you have connected devices, you're able to leverage that data and then create efficiency based off of that. So that has been in place for quite some time. ICO has really done a great job with their handling of the EVs. And then, as far as port processors go, they are a massive leader in trying to incorporate new technologies. So, they're always forward thinking, and we're glad to be able to partner with them on the systems operations side.
Great story, great information. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So for Mark and Ryan, so systems, equipment supply, network challenges, port capacity, do any of those four jump out at you as a potential problem for either one of you guys this year? Or an opportunity, maybe, it's a better word. Mark, you want to lead us off?
Sure. I mean, I think, can I say all of the above? But yeah, I mean, for us, equipment availability is always a concern. As we all know, I think you said the number was north of 70% SUVs.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. 76% last year, yeah.
Right, and so bi-level supply is getting particularly interesting for us as we move more and more to SUVs. We're starting to feel some of the same pains that a lot of the other OEMs have felt for years, in the equitable, distribution of that equipment. And it's not an easy animal, for everybody to deal with. So that is a concern for us. So we've got another SUV coming out of Mexico, again, in a couple of months. The ID4 is a bi-level vehicle, is also an SUV. So we have a lot of concerns there, and then our company in particular, we do have some concerns about port capacities in parts of the country. We opened a brand new facility in the Mid-Atlantic last year. We're content, I think, with how we're situated on the East Coast, and have some level of satisfaction on the West Coast, so that's always an issue. But we've turned our focus on the Gulf at this point, and we're looking for some new solutions. We've got some larger vessels now in our fleet. They have some channel restrictions that are impactful to us, and have been immediately, and that fleet is growing. So we're looking at what our next step's going to be to consolidate some operation and create some new opportunities, and are working, or will be working with some of the folks on this call to realize that. But that would be the two areas that I think that probably jump out. I mean, technology is always an issue. We're always looking to get bigger and better. And like you said, you get up every morning and look at the curve and see where you've got your issues and how you solve those. But the rail car capacity is always probably right up there, along with, for us right now, our port footprint.
Right, good comment. I should have mentioned earlier, by the way, even though it's 76% for the industry last year was truck SUV, the Detroit 3 are averaging basically 91% of their sales are truck SUV. So you'll have people say it's a 70-30 mix, 75, whatever. Yeah. However, those three guys, 91% plus is truck SUV, which means bi-level, so the math is obviously way different there. So Ryan, same thing to you: systems, equipment, network challenges, port, anything a hot button, anything a concern, or like Mark, you're like, shit, they're all a concern to me. So
yeah, no, I really like that answer, Mark. It's all the above, and that's both in challenges and opportunities as well. And Mark touched a lot on the equipment challenges that we have throughout the industry, and also the space capacity issues that we have on the West Coast. And I'll tell you what, if you're looking to optimize space, Alex is your guy. He's a good guy to work with, and he'll definitely do a great job in finding some optimization for the limited space that you actually have. But systems, you mentioned systems, and I think that's the biggest opportunity really for us. And we're starting to delve into that and improve our forecasting ability really down to the micro level now. And so going further out, using iterative machine learning technologies that Daniel mentioned earlier, self-teaching, self-learning algorithms that will help us improve the placement and the forecasting and the predictability of where those sales are going to occur. And then that will help us then integrate that into our system, going down to production planning, scheduling, and equipment planning as well, so that we can get better at optimizing those limited resources that we actually have. So we're starting to work into that and integrate those algorithms into our overall system so that we can be better at our planning.
Okay, great. And I should have mentioned earlier, if people who are watching our session today have questions, there's capabilities there to enter in those questions, and we'll try and get to those the best that we can. So feel free to serve up questions to the panel. Alex, number one, you owe Ryan lunch.
Thanks for the shout out, Ryan.
Maybe dinner. That was a pretty good compliment. So you owe him dinner. So Ryan has a free dinner. Anyway, so Alex, let me serve a question up to you. And so what are some of the major finished vehicle initiatives you guys have been working on, or some of the conversations you're having with some of the customers that they're talking about right now?
Well, a couple of the big ones are on this call, in both Mark and Ryan. For Volkswagen, we've worked with Mark going back to Chattanooga, in Baltimore last year. I think you opened in June a major new port of entry that is a big expansion of terminal capacity in the Mid-Atlantic region. We've also worked with you all in Puebla with Audi and San Jose Chiapa, so a lot of connectivity there. And with Mazda, we're really proud and glad to be working with your first North American assembly plant in Huntsville. And we've worked both on the logistics facility, partnering with Toyota as well, and on a separate vehicle valuation building project. And it's too bad that Missy wasn't able to be on the call, but Toyota's become also very important to us, working both in Long Beach, Guanajuato in Mexico, which is now under production, and Huntsville in Alabama. And I think the common denominator with all three of those OEMs is the complete integration of the finished vehicle logistics and with the other objectives of the assembly plant development process. That finished vehicle logistics was fully integrated into the design and development in Volkswagen, Mazda, and Toyota's cases. And it's not an afterthought in any of them. And it's master planned to grow. We always plan, okay, you've got your initial volume, maybe 150,000 type units a year. We want that to be able to double comfortably and double again to 600,000-ish vehicles feasibly, that there's at least a way to achieve that and accomplish that. And I think that's what we set out to do in all these facilities. And I think that puts these facilities very well positioned into the future, because we're already in Chattanooga. We're starting to see that come along. Mark could probably update there what their plans are, but I think that there's been some announcements of major expansions and everything that have been compelling over the years.
Correct. Good comment. I've dealt with facilities both ways. I've had facilities develop that, the logistics side, frankly, wasn't involved with it. The plant built it. And they said, oh, by the way, here's your acreage, which is, was a disaster, because your expense goes through the roof from a labor standpoint. And then I've had it where we were at the forefront, like when we did the Celaya, Mexico distribution center. And, we were given direction to create a best-in-class facility. And those two different facilities operate entirely different. One flows so much easier. The cost per unit is so much lower than the other one. So it makes a big difference how you put these deals together, So Daniel, question for you, and this is from our viewers. So you mentioned the CIO and the wind power feeding the port. Do you think this is going to become part of port changes here in the U.S.?
From my perspective, that's difficult to say.
Yeah.
Alex might have a little bit more insight. I mean, personally, I would like to see that, right? When you go on a port facility, especially if you're visiting a sunnier area, you always see a lot of vehicle processing centers with lightly sloped roofs that would be great for solar panels. We're by a body of water, so there's always going to be some form of wind blowing. So why not leverage those wind turbines? So, maybe Alex, if you want to jump in, I'll let you kind of give a little bit more insight because I think it's more in your world.
So I think that there's a good chance that we see not only at ports, but at finished vehicle terminals as a whole being leveraged for energy production capacity. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be tied to EVs themselves, because when you need the power and when the wind's blowing or the sun's shining might not be the same thing. And the power you generate could be of a way greater magnitude than you need for EVs or a way lesser magnitude than you need. But I think that wind is one possibility, but I think solar is looking probably really promising. There are solar roofs getting installed in different locations and some really cool ways that, I mentioned earlier, hail protection. There could be some leveraging of protecting vehicles from the elements and installing solar panels in these facilities. We've only begun to see what sorts of potential there is in that, and that could really be, turning the page for the industry into a new era.
Right, good comment. Peter, have you joined us?
Yes, I've joined because we've actually gone over, which is quite staggering, to be fair.
All right.
But we can afford to sort of go a little bit longer. Have you another sort of round of questions you want to go through, Dennis?
We got 3-4 minutes. 3-4 minutes?
Yeah, we can.
All right, 3-4 minutes. And this is a Ryan and Mark question. So let me see here. All right, so Ryan, finish this sentence. I would love to have more of money,
Yeah.
systems, people.
Yeah, a little bit of the above, right? Everything above. But I think one of the challenges that we kind of touched on a little bit earlier was space on the West Coast, port space on the West Coast. And for us, we import over 80% of our vehicles into the U.S. And so port space becomes very important for us. So to finish that sentence, Dennis, I would say we really need more port space.
I got you. Okay, Mark, anything jump out at you? I'd like to have more of.
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned our concerns in the Gulf, and California is always a concern. But yeah, it would be that, and I think as we march forward, and Ryan hit on it pretty well. Also, having the availability to us, I guess, of some of the new technologies that can make us bigger, better, faster, and that that's basically an internal capital question, but so I guess money, if we boiled it down, would be money. But yeah, there's always that. We're always looking for new opportunities, and as you know, that impacts how much space you need and where you need to be and how big you are. So one hand always feeds the other.
All right, last question. Again, this is for Mark and Ryan. So it's retirement time. We're talking 20 years down the road, guys. Not tomorrow, but so it's your last day on the job. You get to meet your new young replacement, him or her. And so, Mark, what advice would you give him?
Well, I would tell him never get too comfortable, because there's always something that's going to happen, right? One of the things I love about what we do is there are always new challenges, right? We never get bored. The weather is a good example right now. And I think, complacency is a killer for anybody, right? In whatever you do. And I think always listen to your partners, our OEM industry meetings, but also our vendor partners who are the experts in those pockets of what we do, right? So I guess that would be my advice.
Right. Ryan, how about you? Years down the road, you're going to retire.
That's right. Yeah, I got plenty more years left before that. I have to answer this question. But it's a great question, and I really appreciate that, because here I am, the old guy, trying to tell somebody young that actually they should be leveraging technology into logistics space. And if you just picture that this old guy telling a new young kid just coming out of college who has all the knowledge of how systems work and the technology that's available, and this old guy's telling him, hey, you need to make more better use of that. But that would be really my recommendation would be to go out there and understand what's available from a technology standpoint to make yourself more efficient, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Very good. Thank you. Peter, I'm going to turn it back to you. Guys, hey, thanks so much for joining me today. I greatly appreciate our friendship and your support today on the panel. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us, Dennis.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Peter, you're muted.
Did you see?
There you go.
I always warn about that, everybody, and then do it myself. Thank you, everybody. That was really, really super session, and leads itself into many, many more questions. One quick one. You've talked about the harnessing of solar and also wind. Will that give us, or give the port and the terminal the opportunity then to sell it to the grid and actually then pull back at a time it's cheaper for them? So could it be a sort of a profit win, if you like, for a port and a terminal?
I guess I could take a stab at this. I think that that's definitely something that's on the horizon, because structuring one of these solar or wind deals, it's called, in the US, it's called a power purchase agreement, PPA, and being able to leverage feeding back into the utility, being able to leverage all of the different sources of state and federal incentives and sometimes utility incentives. It's central to making those sorts of arrangements work. And, you know, the OEMs have access to great big assets that can be solar generators. And there's a really big opportunity in that feeding back into the grid and, you know, giving back as a green power source, and of course, meeting electrification and carbon offset goals that these companies have. So there are a lot of win-win opportunities there.
Thank you. Well, I suppose I'd better cut us off as we're 6 minutes over. Really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Dennis, we look forward to your next session on the 4th of March. And if anyone hasn't had the opportunity to ask a question and they're going to watch this episode on demand, feel free to reach out to all of our speakers utilizing the member session and ask a question directly if it's also something you want with a private answer. Thanks, everybody. Keep safe, and look forward to seeing you again, and hopefully in the future, not necessarily virtually. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, it's Peter again, and thank you for watching the session. Don't forget you can connect with all members within the EV community. Send messages to each other and start to build relationships for the future. Also, take a look at our supplier showrooms. Our partners have got lots of products and services that they have to offer, which again could be of benefit to you. Make the most of the opportunity, and thank you again for joining us.